Is there hope out there?
Felt like someone turned the sun up. The sun came from behind the clouds. I got just an amazing rush of energy, like good, positive energy. I felt good. And for having 3 back surgeries and not feeling great all the time, for me, that meant so much. Life-changing is exactly what this is.
You're giving these folks the smallest amounts possible in order to treat them without them completely hallucinating and getting back into the 60s and 70s version of what people think that this is.
These are people that have never done street drugs. They're dealing with trauma.
What the psychedelics do is they sort of dismantle that old traumatic pathway and give you a whole new map to work with.
Our police officers, our EMTs, our firefighters, our nurses, doctors, talk about seeing trauma every single day of their life.
We keep going down the same way of thinking, doing the same things, having these recurring thoughts that these guys were talking about earlier.
I don't need antidepressants if that's what they're going to do to me.
We were starting to see therapists and doctors show up. They're starting to knock down the doors, kicking down the door to the place almost. You guys have this? This is available now? I thought this was just theoretical.
The plant-based medicinal medicine and what it can do for people. This is a game changer.
Big Pharma is going to push very hard to use synthetics in this manner.
Welcome back to the Today with Tally podcast. Folks, we have a great show in store for you today. We sit down with some experts, folks, some Colorado experts that specialize in administering psychedelics to include DMT. Now, get this whole mushroom craze thing that you think of the past out of your head completely. We're not in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, high school days. No, folks, this is all about microdosing and giving people out there that have suffered the fate of traumatic type situations in their life an alternative. This will be an educational show that we will talk about the use of medicinal alternatives. But first.
Hello, friends, and welcome to another exciting episode of Today with Tally. The mission and goal of this podcast is to bring an engaging conversation that will add value to the lives of everyday people. We will inspire, encourage, educate, and tell the stories of America's finest men and women in an effort to motivate you to live your life to its fullest potential. Be sure to follow us on social media and search Today with Tally. Be sure to subscribe, follow, and share the program as well. Ladies and gentlemen, your host of the evening, Mr. Brian Tally.
Now, I want to set this up here. A good buddy of mine, Congressman Morgan Luttrell out of Texas here, has green-lighted a psychedelic treatment bill for active duty service members as well as veterans, folks who go to the VA for treatment post-service. Psychedelics, DMT, is used to treat post-traumatic stress. And we all know that the VA pushes so much pharmaceuticals on veterans, and oftentimes it leads them down a road that is far worse than what they would have been if they were being treated for the actual problem itself. It's almost as if they're treating the symptom and not the root cause of the problem. Now, psychedelic substances include MDMA, which is psilocybin found in many species of mushrooms. This is a plant-based therapy. Active duty service members will be able to participate in this study if they get clearance from DOD and are diagnosed with certain post-traumatic conditions resulting from the wounds of war. Now, participants will only be able to use the psychedelics in a controlled environment with a therapist. Another thing that you need to understand, folks, is that using psychedelics to treat post-traumatic stress is not new. The Department of Veterans Affairs already studies the use of psychedelics for treating veterans with positive results for recovery, and the federal government studied psychedelics, again, like I was saying, in the 50s and 60s. But this is on a smaller scale. This is microdosing. This is an alternative as well. This is not the end-all, be-all. We would never say that. This is another tool that you can put in your proverbial toolbox to increase the quality of your life. And that was a direct quote from Congressman Morgan Luttrell, who is a U.S. Navy SEAL, retired combat veteran. And with that, I want to introduce our guests today that are experts on psychedelics and DMT. Gentlemen, from left to right, we have Ken, we have Damon, we have Shannon and Donnie. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Good.
I'm hanging in there. I'm pretty excited to have you guys here joining me today. I know this education is going to be good for me. Again, a guy that was consuming close to 40 pills a day for years. It's definitely played a role in my cognitive issues. And I would like to learn a little bit more about how this could help a guy like me or millions of others out there, and not just veterans and folks that are serving in the active duty military today, but civilians alike who are in this country that have suffered from traumatic type situations in their life, or whatever it may be that may lead them down the path to going out and experimenting with a medicinal alternative. So I want to get started with this here right away now. Ken, look, you're the man behind this operation. We call you the dose master. Explain exactly what you do and the overall experience you have in this treating and dosing your patients.
So it's pretty simple. We're all about using the least amount necessary to give people a benefit. So we use small amounts of DMT, mescaline, psilocybin, and so psilocybin's a little bit harder to dial in. You know, you give people small doses, you make them wait a couple days before they take the next dose. So it could take 2 weeks before we figure out what dose, what strain is going to work best for you. DMT is pretty instant. I mean, it's like 10 minutes in and out. And we call what happens to people is getting a reset. So basically, racing thoughts go away, anxiety lessens, and it's really hard to think about your trauma. And you get residual effects from that. Everybody's different. It could be hours, days, weeks.
So basically what you're doing is you're giving these folks the smallest amounts possible in order to treat them without them completely hallucinating and getting back into the 60s and 70s version of what people think that this is.
Correct. So most of our clientele are between 60 and 90 years old. So these are people that have never done street drugs. They're dealing with trauma. Maybe it has to do with the pharmaceuticals they've been on for a couple decades, SSRIs, pain pills, gabapentin, just a bunch of stuff. So after a while, this stuff just quits working. If you're on it for 20 years, they're just increasing your doses all the time. So again, we're trying to rethink dosing. My suggestion for a microdose of psilocybin is 1 every 3 to 5 days, not 2 a day. You know, we don't want people building up a tolerance to it. We don't want them getting dependent on it. So it's just slow and low is how we do it.
How do you know you're giving them the right amount of dosing?
So I start off with a very small dose and we wait about 2 minutes. And then if they don't get anything out of that, I give them a little bigger dose. So it's done with a vape pen, so it's really easy to control. Yeah, the DMT is what we use in a vape pen.
Gotcha. And what's the experience like for the actual person that's sitting in the chair during this time? Are they talking to you?
So I'm asking them questions. They have their eyes closed. They're just in a relaxed state. Basically, what DMT is, it's naturally occurring in humans, plants, and animals. So we produce it when we're born, and then it levels out after about 2 to 3 weeks. We also produce it when we meditate, like Shannon can meditate and release some of his DMT. We release it when we dream. It's what gives us visuals. And then we also release it when we die. So it's called the spirit molecule.
I'll add a little bit to that, Brian, in that with DMT is part of your pineal gland, right? It's the main component of the pineal gland, right? And so that's part of what gives us our connection to the universe, right? And so when you close your eyes, if you see anything, any colors, anything, that's coming from your pineal gland, your third, what's called in Hindi, that would be called your third eye, right? And so there's more going on there than we know, and the DMT is in there naturally.
Now, Shannon, you are the chemist behind this operation. Can you explain exactly what it is you do as a chemist when you're pulling and extracting out the DMT?
Yeah, sure. There's a few ways to look at this, and Ken mentioned it already, in that DMT is in almost everything, right? Literally, I can go pick a leaf off a plant and I can find it. It's in there, but it's low quantities, just like it is in our bodies. We don't need a lot of this stuff. So there's kind of two processes, right? You could either synthetically manufacture this stuff chemically, right? In a lab, mixing chemicals, making them react to create a molecule, or you can go to the plant source and extract it out of the plant source. Very, very important aspect to this is that we use the plant source, right? They're going to push hard. Big Pharma is going to push very hard to use synthetics in this manner. And I can give you an hour lecture on why that is not a good idea. I won't go deep here, but there's a very important aspect to this. And so the natural source makes sure you get the right kind of molecule. And all we're doing is basically using different materials that are very natural. Water is the main one. You extract it out of the water, right? And then you concentrate it down, and then you can use it as such. So, you can do that with mescaline, which is a cactus. You can do that with DMT. You can do that with psilocybin, right? So all three of these materials and much more, right? You mentioned one other, MDMA. MDMA is actually synthetic. I personally am not a big fan of synthetics. I'm a chemist. I've seen it and I've done it too long. They're not good for us. And again, I'll get into that some other point. But the reality is, if you start with these natural plants, all you're really doing is, specifically with MDMA, you're putting into your body something that it naturally creates.
So, I was reading directly from a congressional press release, and it says the psychedelic substances include MDMA. Now, you're saying that is an actual synthetic?
Yeah, this is where it gets interesting, right? They're going after it immediately. They want to automatically throw you. I'm not saying that there's no benefit to MDMA. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that naturally occurring materials are safer for us. And the reason is because of the way the synthesis occurs. It's a little bit more technical, but basically I'll just get into it a little bit. When we make a molecule, when we synthesize it, right, we end up with two molecules that are identical or virtually identical. You get a left-handed molecule and you get a right-handed molecule. They're not the same molecule, right? They're mirror images of each other. They're chiral centers is what that's called in chemistry. The 50% of it is the natural material, resynthesized. The other 50%, you got to tell me what it's doing to me because I don't know, right? And they don't function in the same manner, right? This is constant, right? They never talk about this. Doctors never talk about this. Doctors probably don't even know because they don't work on the chemistry side, right? They just think it's the natural material. But this is why it's very important to get the natural. When we make something and synthesize it, I'll say it again, we get 50-50 mixture of these two molecules. When it's made by the universe, you get 98% this molecule, right? 2% this one. So that's a huge difference in terms of what you're providing to people and why we go after natural materials.
Gotcha. And as I look on this further congressional press release too, I'm seeing how much of a bipartisan support that our government does have for this treatment, but that could be also another reason why they put the MDMA in there, because that's going to be something, along the lines of a big pharma.
Right on. That's exactly where they'll go with it. You look at it like this. When did you mentioned it already, Brian, that they started doing this stuff in the 50s. Well, what were they doing it with? They were doing it with things like LSD, right? Well, wait a second. If I go back and look at the pyramids and the Mayan pyramids, or they had cactuses and mushrooms all over the place. These were all natural hallucinogens or natural psychedelics that already existed on this planet long before we had done anything with science. But the only one we studied was the synthetic one, right? You got to get that in your head. You said you had pulled yourself off a bunch of pills. They're not there to help you. They're there to help them.
Well, I've cut them in half.
I love that.
I work hard every single day on that. Ken knows my struggles, and I know he's been a huge champion of mine, and I'm sincerely grateful, and I will forever be indebted to that man. I know the stuff that you guys are doing works, and people are taking note of it. Now, the next person I want to talk to is Damon Williams. Now, you are a U.S. Army combat veteran, and you are a user of this DMT / psychedelic type treatment that Ken doses you with. I want you to explain what this experience has done for you and how it has changed the quality of your life.
Well, first of all, I always tell people that meeting Ken actually gave me back a certain aspect of my quality of life, because I didn't have much of a life before I met him, right, in terms of my daily routine and how I felt. So I was in so much pain, fighting the VA for physical therapy and everything else. When I met Ken doing PT, he told me to come see him because I was not sleeping, and he put me on some different things, and it took about a week and a half, and I started sleeping again. The first morning I slept, I woke up actually crying because it had been the first time in like a year and a half that I got 7 hours of sleep. And that's what changed it for me. So I became a big advocate for Ken and try to do all I can to spread the word. Microdosing, the first time I ever took a microdose of psilocybin, I took a 0.2, felt like someone turned the sun up, right? Like the clouds the sun came from behind the clouds, and I got just an amazing rush of energy, like good, positive energy. I felt good. And for having 3 back surgeries and not feeling great all the time, for me, that meant so much. So progressing, going forward, I kind of was one of the last holdouts when it came to DMT, because I'm not somebody who comes from a background of addiction. I had a great childhood. My trauma is from the military. So when at first people were first trying it, I'd sit in on their sessions and I would listen to their experiences. And I felt like maybe it wasn't for me. I don't want to just try any and everything. That's just not who I am. So after about 7 months of being one of the very last holdouts, I tried it to get over some things that were reoccurring in my day. Every day, every morning, it was dictating my day. It was making me have a horrible, horrible day, week, month, right? And it was just hard to deal with. So I eventually said, I'm going to try it, because all these people kept talking about how it takes away your reoccurring bad thoughts and all this stuff. So I tried it. My first time, there was very little visuals. I saw like a few pink lines, right? And I felt like the weight, like I had a weighted blanket on me. I felt very comfortable, very relaxed. And it was about a 10-minute process of just laying there, seeing, as you progress, you see a little bit more. It's a lot of geometrical shapes and colors, right? And so that first time, it made me feel so good and so relaxed. I could have a conversation about stuff. I wasn't even thinking about the reoccurring thoughts that I was having. And some time had gone by, I was back up here. I didn't realize it, but Ken had asked me, are you still having those thoughts? And I was like, holy smokes. I had to look at my phone and go back in my calendar to find out what day I had taken it. It had been 10 days. And I'm telling you, not for a single second did I ever think morning, noon, or night about any of those reoccurring thoughts that were dictating my mood during my days. And so for me, that's when I realized, holy crap, this is really something. And so I've tried it about 7 times total now, over maybe the course of a year and a half. It has a really good residual effect for me. So it's a 10 or 15 minute process. And then I get about 6 to 8 weeks of relief, less anger, less PTSD issues really subside really, really well with DMT. I tell my therapist that I see through the VA for mental health every month, I told her that after all the antidepressants I've been on through the VA, ones that make me have violent nightmares of my family, my wife, my child, my dog, my cat, right? 2 nights in a row of having those nightmares, waking up sweating, which I've never done in my life. I'm like, I quit cold turkey on that, right? I'm like, I'm done. I don't need antidepressants if that's what they're going to do to me. And doing DMT for a year and a half, I've told my therapist that I see it is by far the best antidepressant I've ever been on in my life. DMT makes me a better father, makes me, I feel like a better friend. I feel like I'm more willing and eager to want to go out and do things, even though I'm hurting. Because that's my biggest thing, is trying to get out of the house and do stuff, because I just feel like majority of the time I'm in pain from my back issues. So to be able to feel good and have that positive energy and want to go out, for a veteran who deals with a lot of PTSD, that's why I tell people it can give me quality of life.
Yeah, and that's, very true statement there, about, you've, received a lot of your trauma, from the military, had a great childhood. You never had any issues there. You go into combat, you see some things you really can't unsee. The pharmaceuticals come in and they kind of put a big damper on your life, kind of ruin some things there, emotionally, probably made it worse in some ways, and you began to get your life back once you met Ken. Now, once you have started to experiment with this, like you had said, you've done about 7 treatments now. After each treatment, do you get better after each time, or is it something that you do and you're good for 6 weeks and then you got to do it again? And do you is it always the same process, like a wash, rinse, repeat, or do you start to see even more greater effects down the road and further? This.
I kind of feel like, 2-part question. I do feel like it's kind of, the more I do it, the more benefit. Like, compared to what I deal with, or the thoughts I had after my first time doing it, compared to how I am after my 7th time doing it, I feel like I'm better off at the 6-week point now than I was at the 6-week point after my first dose, right? So I do feel like it has a long-term even effect, not just a residual for a few weeks, but I do feel like it has more of like maybe I don't know if permanent, but it kind of feels like the more you do this, just kind of the better off you are. But another thing I wanted to mention was there's 2 types of DMT. It's mimosa and acacia. Mimosa, and each person is different. Me personally, I prefer acacia. Mimosa, I don't get some of the visuals that I do off acacia, unless Shannon's making it, and then we're talking it's a different level because he knows what he's doing. But mimosa, for me, I get a little bit of a reset. Acacia, I see visuals, and the reset on acacia is so much better for me. And I really feel like a lot of people don't want to see things when they do it. You can just open your eyes and it goes away. And then you can close your eyes and go back to it if it's something scares you. But for me, I really feel like the visual is a big part of the reset process and the healing. I think that's important. A lot of people don't want to see it, but I try to tell people you want to do it with the most open mind you can have. You don't want expectations of seeing something or having, I want to see my father. Some people have seen their parents and stuff. I'd like to see my father, but I don't have that expectation of that because I know it doesn't work like that. So I go in open-minded. That's the best way I feel like you can do it, is just to be really clear-headed and open-minded and allow whatever's about to happen. And understand that if any point you get scared, you can just open your eyes. You can stand up,
I'll add a little bit to that, Brian. Just that when we talk about it a lot of times, we'll talk about it in terms of remapping in the brain, right? And how some of these materials do have that residual effect. My wife has trauma, not military trauma, household trauma, right, that she deals with from when she was young. And I've seen her become more be able to contemplate things better, less emotional reaction occurring, and more ability to just be in the moment, right, and just enjoy the moment. And some of those things seem to be very challenging for us in this society right now. Everybody's got some level of damage. Unfortunately, our veterans have even more,
Yeah, folks, I want to stress to everybody out there, this is for everyone. We all suffer from trauma. I mean, look at our first responders every single day, our police officers, our EMTs, our firefighters, our nurses, doctors, talk about seeing trauma every single day of their life. And not just that, but people go through life, and the life challenges and hardships and, getting over those humps and the peaks and valleys of lives, and it's very difficult. Life is not easy. It is hard. So if you have medicine that is here to give you an alternative to increase the quality of your life, I see nothing wrong here with this approach. Now, Donnie, I want to bring you into this. I don't want you to feel like you're being left out here, because I know you have you have a lot of value to add to this podcast today. And you are a psychedelic advocate. Now, I want you to explain the sign behind you, the Society of the Sacred Stoned Apes. What is this?
It's a tongue-in-cheek marketing name, sort of, for a radical theory that Terence McKenna came up with. And the theory has to do with psilocybin. And what his theory is way back in the day, ancient times, possibly before human beings, is that the apes, out of a survival instinct, figured out that by following the ungulates, the hoofed animals, across the savanna, they started to find mushrooms. And since they were on the cow poop, we'll say that they were magic mushrooms. And by ingesting these, the apes then formed the ability to take in more data into their brain. They could see better. They could hunt better because they could see better. They could come up with new, different types of complex thoughts. And this comes from the fact that when we take psilocybin and other psychedelics, it grants the brain new neurogenesis. It allows you to create new synapses and entirely new thinking pathways. And that is super important because we get trauma locked in on a lot of our thinking pathways. And that's why with trauma, we keep going down the same way of thinking, doing the same things, having these recurring thoughts that these guys were talking about earlier. So what the psychedelics do is they sort of dismantle that old traumatic pathway of works and give you a whole new map to work with that you can start creating new beautiful pathways with. So we took Terence McKenna's theory and we created the name of our society around that, because we realized we needed to give this thing a little bit of framework as we were starting to see therapists and doctors show up, which is the surprising part, was that as we started dosing people, they're going back to their therapists, and as the therapists hear of the results of these things, they're starting to knock down the doors, kicking down the door to the place almost. You guys have this? This is available now? I thought this was just theoretical. So they were second in line right after the first handful of people went out there and said, this works for me. We've got doctors and therapists that want to try this themselves. And we've had a really good response with that. And it's because of that neurogenesis we've seen with everybody.
You know, I think it was Ken said that it gives you a reset, or Damon. It completely resets your mind, body, spirit, whatever it may reset, but it will essentially give you a blank canvas once you leave. I mean, like, what's this all? I mean, like, I'm trying to follow here, you know, like, once you get this type of medicine, it's not something you take every single day. So how does it stay in your system and be effective for 4 weeks or 6 weeks until you got to come back for your next dose?
I think that's the piece that we're trying to find the answers to, actually, Brian. You know, we're looking at it like, you know, what other drugs have you seen that get this kind of response, right? That I would argue that there's a reason that these things have been hidden from us, right? You know, the Indians knew all about this. It isn't like we're not recreating anything here, right? What we're doing is going back, right? You know, we're going backwards and saying, listen, there's value in these materials. And they work so well with our bodies that it's incredible. And yeah, it just seems to kind of open the door for you to be more open and be more human.
Right, I just wanted to tell you real quick, there's not been a single time Ken has dosed any single person in the life of doing this. There's not been one single person who has come out of here saying, oh, I don't like that. Oh, that didn't help me. I'm never doing that again. Every single person goes from a 8, 9, 10, 15 anxiety to what anxiety? From pain to what pain? To feeling like they're suicidal, to walking out of here hugging people. I'm not kidding. There's not been a single person who's had a bad experience with this.
And again,
and it only takes, about 10 to 15 minutes for this treatment?
Yep.
And again, we're using the least amount necessary to get somebody to that state. I like to call what I do putting people in a controlled meditative state. And we're talking about visuals and feeling stuff. Probably 8 out of 10 people that come in here, they're elderly. First thing they say is, I don't want to see nothing. So I can actually give them a reset without them seeing anything. A lot of times they don't even think it worked because they didn't feel nothing. And then I ask them what they're thinking about, and they're like, nothing. And then that's when everything changes, because most of us don't know what it's like to not have racing thoughts in our head. And it doesn't take away any of your memories. I believe that DMT will take a traumatic event and put a date timestamp on it. And then that way, when it tries to come up, you're like, oh, that didn't mean anything. That happened. It'll turn a traumatic event into just an event that happened. And this is all, we encourage people to use this in conjunction with therapy. You know, Donnie, my wife, and I are peer support people. So we've all been through this traumatic, experiences, pain. So we understand it. We use it. It works for us, so we talk about it.
Is it possible for somebody to go in there and completely mentally block this treatment from happening?
Yes. Sure. Those are the people that don't want it. It's usually a family member will bring them in. We work with a lot of people in recovery from substance abuse. So I just had a lady a couple weeks ago. She'd been coming in for about a month, weekly. And during her DMT session, she goes, I don't think this is going to work for me. And I said, why not? She goes, because I don't want to quit drinking. My family wants me to quit drinking. So it's not going to work for her.
Yeah.
So
it's all about, you got to come in the right mindset and be ready for change.
So you can put a wall up and say,
Yeah,
I'm not taking this. I'm not going to absorb what it's trying to give me. So my body is going to fight it. And I'm going to walk out of here probably worse off than what I was walking in, because now I've got something in me I don't want to have. And it may be giving me an effect that I don't perhaps want to feel because my body is fighting this. I want to go back to the stuff that I know my body wants and needs, and that's the addiction behind drugs and alcohol.
Yep. That's why I said it's important to have that mindset when you do DMT. You want to be here. You have to have an open mind and allow what's going to happen, because if you're shutting it off and you don't want to be here, it just, it doesn't work for anyone.
Well, and Ken mentioned the meditative mindset. He's actually very right. Now, I spend way too much time meditating, and it's like a serious part of my life. And DMT is the same thing I'm releasing when I get deep into meditation. It's the same effect, right? But for people who I've been meditating for like 10 years, right? 2 hours a day, right? People are like, wait a second, they need a shortcut to crunch that down a bit. The DMT takes you right there.
Donnie, are there any potential long-term side effects to DMT and psilocybin?
We haven't seen any long-term side effects. And as you mentioned earlier, these studies go back to the 50s and 60s. We had an unfortunate huge gap of a few decades in there where we lost a lot of that, and we weren't able to track that data. So luckily we are laced in with a couple of doctors right now that are going to some conferences just this week as we speak on psychopharmacology. So they're going and getting the newest information on what's out there for this class of treatment. And we'll have that soon and be able to share that with you and the public. But as far as we've seen, there's not a large study sample saying that there are large-term side effects that we need to really guard against yet.
Mm-hmm. And now, Ken, are you seeing people going out and getting this and abusing it and perhaps giving this a bad name, perhaps? Is there any ethical considerations here that should be taken into account when using DMT and psilocybin?
Well, so we don't see it because we don't give people DMT to take home. You got to come here to do it. We control it. And I think once our clients start coming in here, they trust us, it's a safe environment. They don't need to seek it outside of this room right here. Most of these people are not street drug users, except for the people that we're dealing with, with heroin withdrawals, fentanyl withdrawals, alcohol withdrawals, meth. So we're seeing great results on getting people through their withdrawals, actually to where they're not even getting dope sick. So we can control their physical withdrawals with things like high potency THC. We just kind of put them on the couch, let them, it helps their stomach to where they're not so nauseous. It's the same stuff we use for cancer patients. And then the DMT can help with the psychological withdrawals. So you're just not thinking about it. So when people are starting to withdraw, you hit them with the DMT and they're like, yeah, I'm good.
Ken, is this treatment saving lives?
It is, 100%.
And have your clients come to you and said, this has saved my life, and express gratitude toward what you're doing for them?
We can't even count how many people come in here in a state and they walk out of here. One day I dosed a lady. She's actually a sex crime investigator. She came down, her therapist sent her over here, and she walked out and walked up to Donnie, who she didn't even know. And what she said?
She said, hey, before I walked in there, I was going to kill myself. And now I feel wonderful, and gave me 2 thumbs up. And she had barely shuffled into the building prior. Looking all morose, you could tell she was at that state where she was just giving up on the whole thing. She left this place ecstatic and loving life.
So I got a question for you. Can you drive when you get done with this treatment?
Yep. So it wears off in 10 minutes. It's very short-lived. We have people staying here about a half an hour. They can get out, they can drive, there's no problems. They're actually more focused, more alert.
Yep.
Your body degrades it very quickly, Brian, like within 20 minutes.
This is a game changer. folks. I mean, this is an absolute game changer. Talk about innovation, when it comes to the medicine, the plant-based medicinal medicine and what it can do for people, and not have the silly side effects of a drug that's a mile long that can harm you in 100 different ways. And here we are here with a chemist that is extracting the oils and creating a good, safe oil for folks for Ken to dose. Folks like U.S. Army combat veteran Damon Williams. Now, Damon, you were talking about seeing visuals. Can you explain what a visual is? And when you're in that state, I want you to paint a picture to our audience on exactly what it is you're seeing and how you are feeling once you're seeing it and put into that moment.
Okay. Visuals are different for each person. I mean, and to be honest with you, visuals on psilocybin and visuals on DMT are completely different. What you see on psilocybin, if you were to take, like tripping back in the day, that's all everything's the same. It's all got this fuzz to it. It's all moving. It's the same. With DMT, it's in your mind, right? Your eyes are closed, and what your mind produces on DMT and what you see is something that you can't even come up with just on a regular day being sober, right? Talking about it. I've seen all sorts of things, like I said, from shapes. There's been a lot of just really geographical shapes, swirling shapes, mixing with crazy colors. I've seen colors that were like smoke, that is like colored smoke almost, right? It's so hard to, unless I just describe an actual episode that, or like one of the doses that I've had. It's hard to, I've seen like what looked like kind of the silhouette of a stingray, but it was like transparent with like all sorts of fiber optic edges, really like rainbow colors. And it was swimming, it was doing all sorts of stuff. When you try to focus on that stuff, it almost seems to in DMT like it will take off or it will leave. So you really have to like focus at a point and then use your mind's peripheral to see what's going on. Because when you focus on something cool, it seems to take off and then come back around. So like I said, the people have seen Egyptian goddesses. People have seen shapes. People have seen parents, other people's parents. It's just, there's no real rhyme or reason for what you see. And honestly, the question for me, but I kind of felt like Shannon could probably answer it better because he's just got the understanding behind it.
My quick take is that you see what you're supposed to see, right? What you're ready to see, right? So these are experiences we're moving into, and I'm going to slip to this for just a second because I always do. We're shifting consciousness. That's what this is. Right? Where people are waking up to the reality of things. And so what you experience will be based on what you need at the moment. And it's going to change every time.
It does.
Right? So if you needed a breakthrough in an area and you were ready for that breakthrough in an area, your unconscious, your subconscious is going to bring that forward for you.
So if DMT if we release this when we dream, and a lot of people have really bad dreams, how would microdosing DMT give you that positive result when you're saying you're supposed to see what you're going to see? So can you have a really scary episode here?
I'll let Ken answer that quickly because I haven't seen it.
We haven't. So a lot of the stuff, and again, the visuals are a very small part of all this, Damon's seeing more visuals because we're actually taking his dose up every time. Over the past year, every time he comes in, every 6 to 8 weeks, I give him a little bit more, so we have longer residuals. So if you're getting a little bit more, you're getting some more visuals involved with it. But the one thing that we're finding the visuals really connect to us, and you never forget these visuals. So you can use them as an anchor point to where, say, 6 weeks down the line, you're having a bad day, you can sit in your chair, turn on the music you were listening to during your dose, close your eyes, and think about that image, and you can actually give yourself a reset without doing DMT.
It seems to, and this is a seems to, but it seems to not bring in your baggage, right? When you're going into this, it's a more pure experience, and it's not going to bring back a traumatic event that you're not ready to deal with at that moment. So this is really more about your body being ready. Now, Damon mentioned seeing a bunch of shapes. I can guarantee you, if I pulled up sacred geometry, he'd be like, I saw that, I saw that, I saw that. This is the language of the universe, right? I always used to say it's a language, because I get it in when I meditate, and it's a language that I forgot, is what I tell people. I know it, I just don't know it right now, right? I forgot it when I came down here. So I think it's just bringing us closer to our soul, right? And letting us look at it. Our soul's not trying to hurt us, right? The problem is people have shut it down so much and lived so much in this three-dimensional world, and in the material world, they forgot there's another piece to themselves. The one asking the question. Who's asking the question, right? Like who is that in the brain?
So you're living in the spirit world, basically, for this session. And the universe is basically speaking to you through shapes and colors and images and visuals that you may see. Now, is there a way that you can go back and actually see what these signs may be trying to tell you?
Yeah. So what my wife does is, since there's already been so much studies done on dreams, we just correlate the two together, because DMT produces your dreams, and then when you're on our DMT, it's also producing visuals. So what my wife does is, say you saw a golden statue that looked like a scorpion, a female. You punch in, what does it mean if I see a golden statue, female statue that looks like a scorpion in my dreams? Because there's already been research done on the dreams, we just tie it into the DMT. So yeah, there's been a lot of times where I personally had a visual, and my wife looked it up, and it was an Egyptian goddess that I seen named Serket. And she gave me a message. And yeah, I believe that it helps save my life.
I agree.
Incredible, man. I gotta try this when I come out to Colorado, man, because this is something that sounds far too interesting and valuable to not want to engage in trying it and of course educating yourself more about it. And that's what this is all about, folks. It's about educating yourself enough to make an informed decision on what you want in your life. If you want to try something new, or you could stay the course and kind of live the same life that you're living without really getting out there and exploring what could be. And I think that is very important. Folks, we have a few minutes left here, and I got a couple more questions. Let's do a little rapid fire here, and I'll go down the line, starting with you, Ken. Now, how does microdosing interact with serotonin receptors in the brain?
So I think that's a good one for Donnie to answer.
I think we could hand that to the chemist. He'd be the most accurate in that.
Okay, Donnie?
I think he panned it to me. So serotonin in the brain. The serotonin in your brain it should increase with the addition of DMT, right? So you are going to increase some serotonin production. And normally when that happens, that and dopamine, you will actually get a little bit colder. Now, what's weird is when you're on a microdose level, there's not a lot of this going on. I mean, not to the overtly. right? Like it's going on internally, but it's not something that's becoming and expressing itself in a big way on the outside. So I think probably we need a little bit more information on that. But in general, what we're seeing is that it should increase it a little bit. And same with the dopamine, right? And so the problem that I think becomes the bigger challenge is when someone's on an SSRI and then they try to bring in some of these treatments because they don't mix well, right? These SSRIs that are influencing how quickly your serotonin is degrading and how it's recepting, like no good, no bueno, right? Like I don't want to play with how my chemical receptors are going down in my brain. And so by bringing in a natural material, your body knows how to use it smoothly.
Serotonin is what's in all of the anxiety medication and depression medication that lifts you up, right? It increases your mood it's a happy pill, correct? Is what the serotonin does?
Correct, but not always in that mechanism, right? So some of these are blockers where they're stopping the absorption of the serotonin, right? That's different than saying that I'm just throwing serotonin into the mix. Right. What they're doing is they're saying you've got this serotonin. We're going to block the reabsorption of that serotonin so it lasts longer. Right. You know, now all of a sudden you're messing with synapses. Right. And how chemical reactions are occurring in the brain.
OK, so say you're a veteran like Damon or like myself who are on here. I'm going to speak on me. OK, because I do take SSRIs and depression meds and pain meds. Now, I have a daily regimen, my morning and night, and if I need to during the middle of the day, I'll take what I need as needed. What if I were to continue on taking my meds as prescribed, and then going out and doing a treatment like this? Is it going to counteract the medicine that I'm currently on?
No, we haven't seen anything like that. At first, we were a little concerned about dosing people on SSRIs, but we've been talking to doctors, and it seems to be good. And actually, a lot of these people are getting off their antidepressants by doing this.
That's true.
And again, it's a very, very small dose. But we literally haven't seen any bad interactions with any medications yet.
Yeah, so really at the end of the day here, you need to be open and fully transparent with your doctor, because coming off of an SSRI or depression, meds can be very dangerous for people to just come off it cold turkey. It could result in death. So if you are going out and you are beginning to take this type of treatment, you would need to talk to your doctor about this, and obviously consult with them and saying, okay, when's a good, what's a good plan for me? When's a good time for me to start coming off of my medication, because I found something else that that is working better for me, that I'm going to replace the pharmaceuticals with to enhance and to improve the quality of my life.
They tend not to like to hear that comment you just made. but what I will tell you is this, with a friend that we were recently helping, she was on an SSRI for 5 years. And what I told her, and this wasn't done with DMT, this was actually done with psilocybin and microdosing. And we gave her 0.3s, so 0.3 grams of psilocybin. And what I told her is, I said, I want you to take this for 3 days and then you call me. And so she did, and she's like, I'm feeling like pretty good. And I said, are you ready to try weaning yourself? Right? And she's like, I think I am. So my response was, call your doctor, make sure it's okay. Within 2 weeks, she had weaned herself fully.
And I want to add that, so we do consult with a lot of doctors and therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. So our clients go back to their doctors or therapists and tell them, hey, I'm going to do DMT, or I am doing DMT, and I want to get off medications. So it's the doctors and the the medical professionals are the ones telling these people how to wean. We're not the ones telling people how to wean off of medications and stuff. That's not our job.
And this isn't just a standalone drug. You don't just take the medicine and then you're instantly cured. A big part of the Society of the Sacred Stoned Apes is that we've created a culture, and we pair that with 2 cognitive behavioral therapy type meetings every week. We have a whole network of people that we can help immerse you into and give you literature and other things to read and watch. So as you're granted this new neurogenesis and your brain can reach out and create these new pathways, we're giving people the resources to create those better pathways in a whole different way so they can look at their life from a different perspective and create new behaviors and new emotions at the same time.
How can people find out more about these resources? And did you say that you actually have is it a club or is it an organization?
We have a private Facebook page that people can plug into, and it's private because we still want to keep it really confidential for everybody involved, because you have some sensitive situations when people are involved in trauma situations and addiction situations. So the best way is to probably either reach out to Ken Reef himself or me, Donnie Martinez, both on Facebook. And I'm as recovery_ape on Instagram, and we can get you hooked into that page, because then we've got a plethora of professionals on there who are posting a lot of information all the time that's just super helpful. So you've got a stream of information throughout the week that help people interface with it and just become a new, better person along the way.
And we're not just talking about psychedelics at our group. We have a shaman come in. He teaches breath work. We have a lady who talks about nutrition. We do sound bowls. We just have a bunch of people that want to help here. And it's great energy in here. It's nothing like you've ever seen as far as a recovery, wellness, or harm reduction group. And that's what we're all about, is harm reduction.
Now, you say harm reduction. You know, we've been talking about a lot of the negatives. Like, I want to try this because I'm going through anxiety or depression, or I'm going through in the family, I'm going through extreme life challenges and obstacles and grief and all the crazy that life throws your way. Do you ever have those folks that come in that are really doing well in life and don't really have any issues with anxiety or depression, and they don't have any, obstacles in their life right now? They're kind of living a really great life. Do they come in and experiment with this as well?
No, that's more recreational. We have nothing to do with recreational use. This is all medicinal use only. So yeah, we vet the people when they come in. We ask them why they're here. Usually when they come in, they tell us right off the bat why they're here. If they're just coming in going, I just want to blast off or something, we're like, yeah, this isn't for you.
I'm going to save my last question for Damon Williams. Again, I'm a huge veteran advocate. And, a lot of the folks that are listening to this show today are veterans. What type of encouragement could you leave with our listeners out there today? And perhaps, not just the encouragement, but what they can receive and how they can begin to live their life again, the same way that you have through this type of treatment. Like, is there hope out there, Damon?
Yeah, there really is. If you're open to this and are tired of feeling the way you've been feeling and dealing with PTSD or trauma, this can give you, I would say, like, your life back. But like Donnie said, you learn your brain is doing different growth patterns, and you're learning to deal with things differently. So you actually get yourself back, but a better life, before your trauma. To be able to, like Ken said, you put a stamp on that and file it away. That's a really good analogy for putting the stuff behind you and being able to move forward. A lot of people throw around the term life-changing, but life-changing is exactly what this is. It will really give you back a sense of peace, a sense of happiness, give you the ability to move forward and be positive. And when you do that, you can start doing things for other people. That's kind of how I am. Like when I started getting better and feeling better, I wanted to help. I wanted to give back. I don't have a lot of avenues to do that financially and stuff like that. So I try to, it's got me to a point where I'm like feeling like I want to live life again. You know what I mean? So that to me is more powerful and means more to me with having my trauma and my past than anything. Being able to be positive, be a good father, and want to help people, man. It gives you back your sense of living. And it's easy. It's well worth it. It will be the best thing you ever do for yourself. Get a hold of Donnie. Get a hold of Ken.
Outstanding.
Yeah, man.
It's time to evolve.
Yeah.
Love it. Gentlemen, it's been great having you on. I think we kind of divulged into a lot of information here. Folks, if you want to learn more about the Society of the Sacred Stoned Apes, just reach out to me. Send me an email, briantally.com, or send the show a private message, or just comment on the show's platform, and I will go ahead and I will connect you with these gentlemen here, and to perhaps get you in this group and to get you feeling better and begin to live your life again the way that God intended you to live it. And you never know what you may get out of this. Again, it could be life-changing for you, and it could be exactly what the doctor has ordered for you. Ken, from left to right, we got Ken. He's basically the founder, the dose master. He's the wizard, right? Or he's one of the guys. And you got Damon, the success story, U.S. Army combat veteran. And you got the chemist, Shannon over here. And then, of course, you got Donnie at the end, the psychedelic DMT advocate that's out there pushing the good word on the street. And again, man, you guys are great. And you're out there doing God's work, man. You're out there saving people, their lowest and most vulnerable and their weakest times in need. And the work that you guys are doing, is truly honorable.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us on, Brian.
Yes, sir. Folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the program. It has never been easier to listen to this podcast. We are on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, TikTok, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Simply search Today with Tally. Also learn more about me and my personal story, and perhaps even get my new book at briantally.com. That's briantally.com. Folks, remember to stay inspired, stay encouraged, stay motivated, and always stay in the fight. Like Damon Williams says, folks, there is hope out there. Until next time for the Today with Tally podcast, this is Brian Tally. Good night. Semper Fi. God bless.